You're listening to Arsenal Pass, a flesh and blood podcast for players by players. And all about strategy, leveling up, and the latest news in the world of Wraith. Welcome to Arsenal Pass.
Hello everyone and welcome back to episode 205 of Arsenal Pass. Hayden Dale here with Pankaj Bhojwani. As always, this week on the pod, we're heading to the ship. We're ready to head off from the docks, sail out to sea, and join those high seas on our pirate ship because we've got high seas to talk about. It's exciting.
Aye, matey. I am on board.
Oh, we are so in. I'm so hyped for high seas. I didn't think... Okay, so there's two things that are coming in this set. One that I thought I would not be very hyped about. But actually, they're probably the two things I'm most hyped about, weirdly, now that I've seen the flavor and some of the cards so far, and particularly the heroes, is Necromancer and Pirates. I was like, neither of these things interest me particularly. People have always been calling for Necromancer, can't wait for Necromancer, so excited for Necromancer, and I've been like, fine. But the flavor of this Necromancer, particularly, for some reason, Pirate Necromancer, very cool to me. This is giving me Pirates of the Caribbean a bit, and I'm actually so keen for the set now. I'm so excited to talk about it as well.
So I'm similar to you in that the Pirates part of it wasn't doing anything for me as well before. I was like, I'm not sure why everyone's super, super hype about wanting Pirates. I'm like, that's fine. It's like, it's a cool, sure. It's all right. It's a fantasy trope, somewhat. Mm-hmm. But I was very excited for Necromancer. But the Pirate part of it does kind of opposite to you. It does pull me back a little bit from Necromancer. I was like, when I was envisioning Necromancer, I was thinking more like maybe Shadow or just vanilla, like untalented Necromancer.
Yeah.
So we'll see how this Pirate one works. But so far, it is looking super, super cool for sure.
And we're getting Mechanologist finally after not seeing Mechanologist since Crucible of War. I know what you're saying. Bright lights, but no, it doesn't count. So we're finally seeing Mechanologist in a core set, in a main set.
Dash.io had her time in the sun. Come on, she was best deck at Worlds.
Yeah, but that was from an armory deck.
Arguably.
That wasn't from a set. I didn't get to play limited with that hero.
That
is
fair.
It did, but it doesn't count.
Wait, hang on. Wait, were you not a fan of Bright Lights Limited? I feel like at the high level of play, like the top level players who really enjoyed Limited, I feel like I hear again and again that they really enjoyed Bright Lights Limited.
Maybe, Draft was fine. Sealed was actually unplayable. Draft was fine.
Not Sealed.
Yeah.
Okay. I meant Draft. Yes, I meant
fine.
Draft.
I still didn't enjoy it. I still, didn't enjoy it. But I think it was a symptom of just being all Mechanologist, to be honest. But and if I wasn't playing like Dash.io, whatever the young Dash.io is called,
database, I think.
Yeah. Then I wasn't particularly enjoying it. But anyway, is what it is. This week in Flesh and Blood, Pankaj, what's been happening?
So I've been doing a bunch of CC practice with a bunch of people with the testing group. And I updated the show notes just a few minutes before we got on, Hayden, because up until a few hours ago, I was starting to believe in Verdance. I actually thought Verdance had a shot. Here's the thing. The past few days, like early on this week, by the way, we're recording this on a Thursday evening. Mm-hmm. Early in the week, we were playing a new Verdance build into Auroras, into our internal Auroras, and we were doing pretty well. We were going positive and stuff. And then earlier today, literally a few hours before this call, the Auroras decided, let's try this different strategy that we haven't yet tried into Verdance. And then we just got smoked and just kept dying, and it wasn't even close. So I have a scratch that, not anymore, not interested in Verdance, and feeling a little bit like Aurora is a bit of a menace for this meta, Hayden. How's your week been?
Yeah, I think we're going to break down not just high seas in this pod, but we're going to talk a little bit of meta update just to kick off the main topic before we get into high seas. But yeah, Aurora feels very powerful. I have a question. You can mull on this, Pankaj, before we get to the main topic, because I will ask you again the main topic, so you don't need to give me an answer now. When we get to Pro Tour London, what percentage of the meta will Aurora be, and will it be somewhere between Lexi and Starvo? Will it be more to the Starvo end? Will it be more to the Lexi end? Or will it be under that and actually it will be more akin to, say, KO or something from PTLA? You can come back to me on that one.
All right.
This week in Flesh and Blood
Cool.
for me. Also done a little bit of PT testing at the front end of the week, and then I've been traveling for work the last few days, so not so much Flesh and Blood for me over the last few days. But we're 3 weeks away. Wow, we're 3 weeks away from Pro Tour London, so it's going to start ramping up. We're talking in the pre-show. Need to spend some time drafting over the next few weeks. It's odd because if I was playing the Pro Tour, my focuses would starting to really shift into locking in my deck, locking in my list, starting to solidify my draft strategies. Whereas instead, what the next 3 weeks is going to look like is testing as wide as possible, learning about as many heroes as I think could impact the format, different strategies so I can understand them that I might not have seen before. And when it comes to draft, I'm going to be going really wide with the strategies and trying to just like throw things at the wall and see what sticks, just out of interest of and try to play as many cards as possible. So very different to what my Pro Tour testing would look like. It's looked the same up until about a week ago, and now starting to look really different comparative to what it would look like if I was actually playing the event, which has been quite an interesting sort of reflection and revelation for me, I guess. I'm sure you're used to it by now, but
I've definitely been spectating a lot of our in-house testing games, like, even if it's a matchup that I don't really care for in terms of me as a player. I'm still just spectating it just so I can know more of the intricacies and know the game plans that people are at least trying out.
Yeah. What's the percentage chance, do you think, that I get onto coverage in whatever round that my first round is and there's a Leviathan at the table?
The percentage, round one, Leviathan, man centers producer, I'd say about 80%. Yeah.
I think I'm round two,
Yep.
actually. So I think you guys are kicking us off maybe. So, but I just have a feeling that Ethan's going to be like, oh, here comes Hayden, who always has something to say about Leviathan from a not so nice perspective, and he's used to getting trounced by brutes. So time to put a Leviathan on stream, I guess.
I'll put in the word. I'm sure he'd love to know that you are very excited to cast a Leviathan game. I'll let him know personally.
Can't wait.
All right, with that, Hayden, shall we move on to the news?
Indeed.
Cool. We just want to clarify something that was said in last week's podcast. I said that Battle-Hardened Charlotte was the largest standalone Battle-Hardened. I completely failed to specify that was the largest standalone Battle-Hardened in the US specifically, which was a big thing to admit. I do admit and apologize for that. But yeah, that is the clarification we wanted to put out there. We just got a bunch of spoilers dropped on us randomly, out of nowhere it seems like, including the heroes that are coming out in High Seas. We'll have more of that in the main topic for sure, and we'll talk about more of the mechanics in, at least so far, what we have seen in High Seas, all the pirate themes with the gold and the looting. Calling Kobe happened this past weekend as well. Congrats to Tatsuya Okanishi for winning on Florian, which is definitely a bit of a spicy take. I don't think many of us had that on our bingo card. I think a lot of us were expecting Aurora. I think you predicted Enigma, was it? I predicted Aurora, for sure.
What's interesting is, so I knew that Nick Butcher was going to Kobe, and I knew he was playing Florian. And I was like, oh, that's, also interesting from that perspective. But I'd like seen some games, and I knew like Florian was pretty decent, especially into Aurora. So I was like, I think something else might happen this weekend, but it probably wasn't expecting Florian to exactly win. But yeah, there you go.
Yeah, unfortunately for Nick Butcher, you got kind of Reinhard on stream.
I know the feeling.
But that was... Yep, that's happened to you too. Other than that, we've got Calling Sao Paulo this weekend. So it will be super exciting to tune into that stream. That would be, I would say, I think, is that our last calling before PT London?
Yes, I've got the tour schedule up. I think it might be.
Yeah. So definitely all eyes will be on this to try and get like a last grips. I think there's still a couple of Battle Hardens before the PT, but I think I know there are people traveling for Sao Paulo, so I think there'll be a lot of eyes on this for just a bit of a like a preview for what the PT London CC meta might hold. There was a localization announcement as well. Spanish, German, and Italian product. They're looking to discontinue that, but they will be continuing French. It's like just a thing if anyone missed that part of the announcement. And then we also are going to have a first calling in Germany this year, and also a calling in how do you
Bologna.
Bologna, yeah, which would be super super exciting.
Italy, yeah. I mean, we've had the after Worlds in Barcelona, there was a Bologna Battle Hardened that quite a few people traveled to actually, and it was quite successful. So cool to see now the calling circuit come to. That was it right after Barcelona, right? Pretty sure.
Was that the one where it the immediate weekend, like right after Barcelona. Or am I confusing?
Yep.
I think I'm confusing for Japan. Okay, because the same thing happened in Japan. Like after Worlds Osaka, there was like another Valhardin. The weekend after, and like Brody and Michael Fong were both there. Like obviously, I'm just like,
okay, they were at Bologna as well after Barcelona as well, of course.
So sounds about right.
It's very cool, and I think back to Italy now with finally the calling series, and to Germany. And what's crazy about Germany is so hard to have competitive TCGs run events there because of their gambling laws, effectively, and it seems like LSS has managed to convince, I don't know, the German government that Flesh and Blood has got a sufficiently low variance level to it, that it's a high enough skill game that they can award cash prizes. I'm not quite sure how that's worked, but that's very exciting. So they're on the way to Germany. I mean, the things that, for instance, Magic really walked away from events in Germany, Yu-Gi-Oh!, Pokemon, etc., because they couldn't hand out cash prizes for those events. So that's very... And obviously a lot of those tournament series are predicated on those cash prizes, right? That's why people travel to them. That's why people are there. So, that's very, very exciting.
I'm just picturing someone from LSS like waving the Player of the Year leaderboard in front of some German like government official saying, "Look, it's the same players again and again. We have no variance. Let us play our game here." I don't know.
So funny. I want to just on Taipei. Like, we're going to talk high seas, but I'm getting more and more keen to take a little trip to Taipei. I'll tell you what, for the world premiere.
Going to take a ship there?
Yep. Going to board my ship.
Travel by boat. Get in theme.
Yeah, I'm going to take the mechanologist ship, though. I'm going to take the one that flies through the air. All right. On to the Commander Cookout. If you want to get your questions in for the Commander Cookout, please do so. You can email us at arsenalpassfab@gmail.com. You can drop a comment in the YouTube comments if you're a YouTube watcher, or pop over to the YouTube channel. Let us know that is for a Commander Cookout question. If you're an Arsenal Pass patron, you can drop that in our Patreon Discord. With that said, we got 2 questions this week coming from Discord. I thought they were both shorter questions and quite interesting. So the first question comes from Obtuso on Discord. How do you guys see Dash.io in this new meta? Thinking about bringing it to calling Sao Paulo this weekend, or next weekend, now it's this weekend, to T-bone the Syndras and run the Auroras to take advantage of all those no blocks and bomb run them. Any thoughts on that, Pankaj?
I think the point about Syndra I'm less interested in. I think as we get closer to PT London, the draw to Syndra is getting less and less. I think people are picking up that hero has quite a few weaknesses, and Aurora just seems to be stronger. So that part I'm less interested in. Now, Dash.io into Aurora, I feel like I could definitely see that being favored. One thing I will point out, I think Dash.io with the new item, Null Time Zone, is slightly underexplored. I think if people are also expecting Zen to potentially, I'm going to put this in quotation marks for the people listening, to counter, quotation marks, Aurora, people are looking to Zen. Dash.io is also actually fairly decent to Zen as well, because you null time zone, you call energy, and it actually just bricks them for a little bit. And I think Dash.io, I could see Dash.io being just having the upper hand in the aggro mirror anyway, so into Aurora as well. But I'm not so sure what else you're beating. I think we've had this conversation before on the pod. There doesn't seem to be an anti-fatigue strategy. So any deck that can just side into full 3 blocks feels like they probably can just fatigue you. And we did just see an Earth Hero win a calling. So I don't know. I'm slightly skeptical, but I could see the vision.
Yeah, I think even if... I mean, look, this weekend might be the weekend. Maybe Florian is still not going to see quite as big an uptick, right? My view, honestly, is that Florian is going to be in the top 3 to 4 most played decks of Sao Paulo this weekend. I think Sao Paulo will potentially represent more of a reflective PT meta because it's so close to the PT. Often, I think what you find is that calling metas are really, really open, and that is generally always the case. But when they coalesce with a big event and kind of some of the solidification of a meta, they tend to be a little bit narrower because of the players traveling, things like that. So yeah, I mean, I think interesting meta call. Is it one I would make? Probably not. But I can, why not, right? If you expect Aurora to be a massive slice of the pie this weekend, I mean, I can't see any way that it's not the most played deck by quite a significant amount as it was in Kobe, then yeah, I think if you've got plans into, if you have a plan for Florian, if you still, Syndra's probably still going to be the top 5 most played decks, right? Even if it is dropping away. And I think you're right, it is dropping away. It could be a reasonable pick. I tell you what, I'm looking at my boy Yao though. I'll tell you what.
That is so interesting to me. Yeah,
It's the cope, right? I'm on the cope. Second question. We have a second question in the Commander Cookout this week, which comes from Sigma Chaos Brute, a regular in the Arsenal Pass Discord. Have you, at Counter to Balance, so at me, have you ever fetched a Bloodrush Bellow with Sand Sketch Plan asking for a friend? But they do actually have a question here as well. The other podcast question would be, how much does the Brute class need to lean on those kinds of riskier plays in modern Fab to check deck/heroes that are consistently above rate, given how outdated they feel? This is such an interesting question. I'm gonna kick this off. So if you didn't see this on stream in the weekend, my friend Nick Butcher was given the Hayden Dale treatment on stream and a recipient of a pretty insane Rhinar turn, which involved fetching a Bloodrush Bellows off a Sand Sketch Plan, which I actually think that play is pretty reasonable, like in the context of his hand actually had 4 cards, so 25% chance to whiff, but probably a 75% chance to guarantee win the game on the spot. So it kind of makes sense to me. If you feel like if the matchup played out, you were less than 75% to win, then yeah, that seems like a pretty reasonable line to take in my eyes. I think what's interesting about those having to make those kinds of plays is, yeah, that does feel like where Brute is for me these days, particularly Rhinar and Leviar. I think you really do sit into that category, and particularly in a format that is Ninja dominated, and by Ninja I mean the Lightning Ninja, of course, in the form of Aurora. Just traditionally such bad matchups for Brutes. Your Intimidate is just so irrelevant as a Rhinar in particular, so you're kind of playing with the vanilla text box a lot of the time. So yeah, I do think you kind of unfortunately have to play in that way, but I don't think you always do. And I think what's quite interesting about that hero in particular and Brute is that you can flex with the meta. The challenge I find is that you're always kind of like 40 to 55%. You don't really have any like amazing matchups except for, maybe a Prism, for instance. But even then with auras and even Enigma with, like its auras as well, it's not amazing. There's ways for them to play around you. So even Dromai, into those heroes was like perfectly reasonable. So yeah, that's my view on it.
To answer the question, like generally, I do agree with you, Hayden. I think if you're in an unfavored matchup where you're against like the Aurora or the Syndra, then I do think you have to lean into the plays like this, into the higher variance plays. Though I will point out that is a case across many heroes.
Yeah.
In most heroes, when you are in an unfavored matchup, how you should be playing is playing for the higher variance line, taking the risk, just knowing that you are behind already, like implicitly because of the matchup. And so you take the line that has more of a risk and a higher variance in it because you need to hit the ceiling because your median is just not going to cut it. So yeah, I will agree that Brute in those matchups is in that spot. But I do have a question for you. Specifically for that game in question. I'm not entirely sure if that was like super needed. I remember watching that being like, the Florian already had like 2 cards intimidated away, and this was the first Blood Rush. I feel like, I don't know, I was a bit like, I'm not entirely sure, but you have more Brute experience than I do. And obviously the player did as well, and they did get there. But I was a bit like, you're already favored into Florian. It just felt like just didn't need to.
I think that specific play is really reasonable, like fetching a non-6 with Sansketch Plan. In that instance, yeah, no, I'm not sure I would have made that play or think that play was necessary. It's cool, I guess. Yeah, sure. I'm on the same page. I think what's interesting, though, I just want to riff on something you just said, which is you have to go for your ceiling. You have to aim for your ceiling, and that means making these plays or leaning into this kind of style of riskier plays. So because the median is just not good enough in that matchup, for instance. My problem with Rhinar is that the median is not good in most of your matchups, and that is kind of the problem, right? So I agree, like when it's you kind of have to play above the median in some of your matchups. That's what I always liked about playing Rhinar. I was like, yeah, you have to make these kind of cool, kind of knife's edge plays, but a lot of the time you just get to play great value. You get to play, that's why I love Romping Club so much. It was like, you just get to kind of play a game of Flesh and Blood and play a bit more of a traditional game. And then you find these spots, or you find these games, or you find these matchups where you do have to play to these lines, and quite interesting lines. But what I feel every time I've revisited Rhinar in the past kind of 2 years, unfortunately, is that you're just consistently having to like play to those pieces, and that's for me is just not good Flesh and Blood.
You know what? If the Earth heroes are coming into the meta, and Prism's also around.
Yep, love it.
I mean, I think Reiner can play for the median in those matchups. Like, I feel like Reiner is like you playing Reiner, the opponent flips up an Earth Hero, you're probably like totally happy. Or they flip up Prism as well. So, I mean, I still don't think it's his time. Obviously, it's going to be super dominated by Aurora, and Aurora's like closest thing to like the best counter, I think, is Zen. Yeah. So Reiner doesn't want to see either of those.
Oh, I think Aurora's much worse. To be honest.
Oh, for sure.
Because Zen actually wants to block sometimes, when it has awkward hands.
Sometimes. Yeah, Aurora is just miserable.
Yeah. Aurora can always punish you. Like, basically, its consistency of being able to punish you with the 5-card hands is just so much more consistent. And it also has these kind of, like, mini setup turns it can do to get around your kind of, like, defensive lines and things like that as well. So, yeah, great questions. I thought those were both really interesting questions. Both of them were really super timely, so I thought I'd grab them both for this week. But if you want to get your questions in for the Commander Cookout, please do so. And with that, Pankaj, let's get into the first part of the main topic. Our main topic this week is Pirates in Flesh and Blood and Earth Dominance, ? Well, we're going to start with a bit of a meta update and talk about Earth being in the fold with all things leading to a Florian win last weekend in Kobe. But I want to talk meta and top 8 of that event. Just to give you a bit of a recap, and for the listeners, the top 8 in this past weekend's calling looks like 4 Auroras, an Enigma, a Nu, a Florian, and a Zen, with the final being played out between a Aurora and a Florian, with Florian taking the win. And there was a 12-0 Enigma, though, that fell in the quarterfinals to one of the Auroras, which was also quite interesting. So, yeah, what do we think of this past weekend? What do we think of the meta? Just to recap the meta as well, first was Aurora significantly. I mean, it was 3 times more popular than the second most popular deck, which was Zen. Zen, Syndra, Nu, Enigma, honestly, even down to Ira, Florian, were really close in representation, particularly Zen and Syndra. So it was Aurora, then Zen, Syndra, Nu, Enigma as the top 5, and then Ira, Florian. And then you see some sort of follow-ups with like decent amounts of Prism. Fang was surprising at 11 copies. And then things like Azalea and Vincent, etc. So yeah, what were your thoughts on the weekend, Pankaj?
So you asked me earlier what my prediction is for PT London Aurora representation.
I did.
Do you remember what was Zen's representation at PT Amsterdam? It wasn't as high as Lexi's, right?
No, I think it was like
during PT early.
I think it was a little bit under. I think Lexi was like closer to the 26% mark. I think that Zen was like 22, 23% from memory.
Yeah, my guess is Aurora will be closer to Lexi. Honestly, if you asked me a week ago, I was in the under 20% idea. I thought it'd be like 18-ish%. But recently, I've been like, she's giving me so much Lexi vibes, to be honest. Like with the new Armory deck upgrades, particularly Zap Clappers. That equipment piece is absolutely nuts. Just with the whole like CLV thing. So it's giving me Lexi vibes in the sense that it's this linear aggro deck where it feels like even if she's against a quote-unquote bad matchup, she's still very, very much in the game. And I'm not sure what her like bad matchup even really is. So yeah, giving me Lexi vibes. As for this past weekend, I think it can be very tempting to focus on Florian 1. And so it's like, oh, the Earth Heroes are here. I know we're calling this podcast like, oh, there's Earth in the field. But the question mark there is a very, very, it's a question mark in bold and increased font size, because you don't want to miss that there were, after all, 4 Auroras in this top 8. The half of this top 8 was Aurora.
Yeah. I thought what was interesting, though, going through the top 8 bracket, is the Florian. I was like, oh, you've chosen Florian, good into Aurora, but also, like, Zen's the second most played deck. I know that Tatsuya took out a Zen in the top 8 as well in the quarterfinals, which I thought was, super interesting. And it kind of makes sense. Like, I think, if you look at Florian over the weekend, in theory, it's favored into 3 of the top 4 decks, I would say. 3 of the top 5, maybe.
So you think Florian's favored into Aurora?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do. Well, you
think it's straight up favored?
I think that's what the results from the weekend would show us. Look at the players that Tatsuya had to beat in this top 8. Like, they're not just like, oh, it's this random Aurora player that showed up. It was Alan Lau and then putting Tam, two of the world's best players on Aurora.
Okay. I think it was Pudding in the finals, was it? I'm just looking.
Oh, sorry. You're right. No, sorry. I think they played
against
another Japanese player in the semifinals. You're right. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, but still, he did have to beat a few Auroras, and I have to shout out his choice to go AB0. I think that's some really, really interesting innovation. Actually, I think it makes a lot of sense. You just have the break. Oh man, why am I blanking on the Earth feat? Break ground.
Well grounded.
Well grounded. Yes, that one. You rely on well grounded to not get juiced on like a CLV with like a Sigil of Suffering or something. And other than that, you're not really ABing, because ABing against Aurora oftentimes just feels so terrible. They're like, I start with a burn up shock, here's one ping, and you're not going to AB that anyway. So I did really enjoy that piece of innovation from him.
Yeah, I think more heroes should look to adopt that, to be honest. Especially if your plan is to, as long as they're not going to plan to combo against you, I think. If their plan is to mostly race you or attack you, maybe a little bit of arcane damage here and there, then yeah. Or you're playing really light blues, then I think you're not going to spend a card to stop a burn-up shock or a arc lightning turn, for instance. So
I do wonder whether that's going to change as more and more Auroras adopt Zap Clappers in their arms piece. Maybe. Because now there's it used to be that, if they chance into Sigil of Suffering with CLV, then you break your well grounded or something. But now they always have Zap Clappers. So gonna be interesting to see if that changes.
What did you think of Nu being the fourth most played deck last weekend?
I think Nu has consistently, even across RTN season, has consistently shown to be super, super popular. And I'm not entirely sure why. I don't think Nu is very, very happy to see Aurora, to be honest. The Zen matchup, the Zens have showed it up a lot with their whole defensive mid-rangey suite. And people are still playing Enigma, and you're fine, you're like okay into Enigma. But there's very few matchups these days where I'm playing Nu and I'm like, I'm happy to see this matchup.
Yeah.
Like no one's playing Victor, and then everything else just feels like you are really, really fighting for your win, when instead you could just play Aurora and blow people up.
I want to talk a little bit about Earth Heroes, because that was kind of one of the pieces we want to talk about in this pod. Is Florian the real deal? Is it not? So how good do we think the Earth Heroes are in general? Is it only Florian? I know you've been spending some time with Verdance. I've been spending some time with Jarl. So I don't know, take us away. Let's just go one by one. Let's start with the big dog in the Earth space, Florian. Like, how good? Because you've always been pretty down on Florian. Are you still in that same space, or do you think you've got there's a little bit more merit than you've been giving it?
I think a little bit more. Yes, I think he is. He has more game than I thought he did, but he's still not at the spot where I'd be comfortable taking him to like a big event, to a major, and also not in a space where I would recommend someone else take him. I think he's still lacking in my opinion, the very, very strong reason to bring him. I'm not entirely convinced that he's favored into Aurora, but I guess that's kind of where this is coming from. I think if you're not taking Aurora, you should be trying to take something that's favored into Aurora, given we expect her to be the most represented. And I'm not entirely convinced that Florian is that. But it seems like you are. So why don't you tell us how you see the Florian Aurora matchup and what makes it favored for Florian?
I mean, I don't have enough experience in it. I think, having watched some games, having even watched the final and other games through the week, I think I don't think it's worse than 50-50. Is that good enough reason to be playing Florian? I don't know, right? What's quite interesting to me about this meta is that traditionally, let's say you're walking into a Pro Tour landscape and 22 to maybe 28% of the meta was going to be a certain deck, a deck that's just best deck in format. I think we're in a similar position right now with Aurora. Traditionally, one of the calls that you could make, and this is kind of the rock, paper, scissors thing, is you go, right, well, there's the one best aggro deck in the format, I'm going to play the deck that, beats that. So I'm going to play this X deck that's really defensive or whatever, or can target the aggro deck. And then some people will go, well, I'm going to take the other piece of that. I'm going to take the 75%. I'm going to auto lose to this best deck in format, but I'm going to rely on everyone else preying on it, and I'm going to prey on them, right? It's like the level 0, the level 1, the level 2. Like Aurora being level 0.
Shout out.
Yeah.
Shout out the Enigma players at PT Amsterdam, because that was their plan.
And that went really well.
Carry
for
on.
Them. So that's the plan you have, right? Level 0, level 1, level 2. I think what's interesting about this format, though, is that if you look at the results of the last weekend, you look at the results of even Road to National season, some of the Battle Hardens over the last couple of weeks, you don't just have one aggro deck sitting at the top of the format. You have 2 or 3 aggro decks sitting in the top 5 decks of the format. Now, that might change as we head towards the Pro Tour, but I don't think Zen's going anywhere unless it's Living Legends. So and that still is an aggressive leaning deck that can punish decks like, say, Enigma with the right setup. We're seeing Ira in the top 6 decks played last weekend. I think people have this thought that maybe they can have Ira beat Aurora. People are still going to pick up Syndra with the idea that I'm playing the most linear aggro deck, and maybe, I think some people still think it is a faster aggro deck than Aurora and can be favored into Aurora for whatever reason that might be. So it's a little bit different to other times maybe where you say, like if I look at Worlds, for instance, Dash.io was the aggro deck, right? And there was, Zen was kind of floating around, but nowhere near as, like, it wasn't the second most played deck like Zen is here relative to Aurora or even Syndra. So I think we're in this really interesting spot where you can't really just say, I'm going to play the Enigma to prey on all the other decks that are on Aurora, for instance, or I'm going to play X deck to prey on Aurora. Like, is there even a clear version? So I just thought it was interesting when it comes to talking about something like Florian, because Florian maybe is a bit more in the middle on some of those things. It probably has a lot of around 50% matchups potentially. So yeah, I think it's quite interesting right now, the meta.
So I will say, 4 or 5 weeks ago, we had this conversation where we were like, hey, there's 4 top aggro decks. I was like, Viserai, Aurora, Zen, Syndra, they're all hanging out at the top. I will say, though, I think things have changed. I think,
for sure.
As of last week, with the Armory deck release, so obviously Viserai LL, but the Armory deck release, Aurora Armory deck release, has, I think, pushed Aurora above Syndra, like, significantly, to the point where I'm not entirely sure why you're playing Syndra. And this has brought, from like the 4 or 5 aggro decks at the top, I think we're down to 2, which is Aurora and Zen.
Yep.
These 2 other decks, where I'm like, okay, I can totally see why you're bringing this. I don't really see the reason to bring any other aggro deck. So, not entirely sure I agree about there's like all these aggro decks at the top, and so you can't bring like the level 2 thing as much. It's just that, well, I guess in the raw percentage-wise, people who are playing Syndra probably gravitated to Aurora. So maybe the amount kind of stayed the same, but the number of heroes, I think, is going to be more narrow and focused on Aurora and Zen, I think.
Yeah, I think it's just we were at this stage a lot earlier in previous metas. Like, I don't think it was always clear what the best aggro deck was. And I think we've discussed this as well, as coming out of this last meta, each of the aggro decks kind of did different things, right? Whereas maybe now we're just getting to the point, I think actually we just are getting to the point where one is just so far and away better and does all the things it needs to, that it's not the same spot that we're in previous metas. So yeah, and we've had that nuance to some degree, even like at Worlds. Like, I forgot about Viserai, right? Like, Viserai was definitely around, but it doesn't. Yeah, I think now we've just got this. Yeah, Aurora's just so dominant here, I think.
So I do want to move on to talk about our next Earth hero, and I'm really curious to hear your thoughts about this, because I also not entirely convinced yet. Talk to me about Jarl, Hayden. What has brought you to the Ice Earth Guardian hero?
Yeah, I mean, it's actually not the Earth, to be honest, it's the Ice, I think. And I've been spending a lot of time with Jarl. I think it's been one of my... I was saying to Pankaj, I was messaging him during the week, I was like, I've been enjoying playing Jarl, which I did not expect to have happen. So I spent a lot of time with Jarl, and I think Ice is in just a pretty good spot in this meta, to be honest. I think, looking at decks like Aurora, Syndra, I think if people move away from Syndra, they stick with Zen, for instance, and Aurora, then the Ice is less relevant in some ways against Zen, but I think you still have a good matchup there with the other cards in your deck. But yeah, I think one of the best ways to attack Aurora is to have to make them trade multiple cards to do things, right? Like, I think Arctic Incarceration is like a criminally underplayed card right now, right? If they don't have a blue on an Arctic Incarceration turn, your value is so high, and you get to build back up to a 4-card hand to come in with a threat and then arsenal another piece of disruption or a defensive card, or come in with a piece of disruption to follow it up like a Spinal Crush or something. And I think, what something like Azalea tries to do, right, for instance, is it tries to just chain these disruptive hands into Aurora. But realistically, they're not that amazing. Like, Red in the Ledger, when they can still play a 3-card hand through your Red in the Ledger, is not particularly fantastic, honestly. With a lightning press and an attack and things like this. So whereas, something like an Arctic Incarceration for Aurora to try and punish that, they have to have the blue. And then it's going to, for instance, if they have to pitch their blue to an Arctic Incarceration, their burn up shock turn is going to be significantly impacted, because it's very unlikely unless they have Tunic up that they're going to be able to swing with a Starfall, for instance. So you can pick those turns really well. And the other card is Frostfang as well. I think Frostfang really adds another dimension to that piece as well, where you're throwing a disruptive threat that has damage and forces them to trade a card into you, and as a pummel target. So yeah, I've been enjoying my time with Jarl.
I'm so glad you brought up those cards, because I think when people hear Jarl, at least that me too, honestly, would like part of the reason why I'm not convinced about Jarl is because I think the predominant strategy with that hero is to play CYB.
Oh, it's so
and
bad.
I don't think this is a meta for CYB. So I'm so glad you're bringing up cards like Incarceration and Frostfang. And yeah, maybe there is a build of Jarl that has those cards and can beat up Aurora with it. I could definitely see that. I think Frostfang, especially as a pummel target, like you brought up, is amazing. I remember in my brief foray into Oldhim, I was actually playing like a Frostfang pummel Oldhim, because that card is very, very good. And I mean, to your Arctic Incarceration point, it's not just do they have a blue, right? Sometimes if they, I don't know, they use their Crown of Providence on their CNC, their Incarceration makes 4 Frostbites. It's reminiscent of Lexi, where she's, reminiscent of Lexi, where she like flip up Incarceration and just play it, and that's her one card play to just steal entire tempo.
Yeah.
So I could see it.
It's been really interesting, I think, and I have, if the Pro Tour was this weekend and I was playing, or I was going to a coin this weekend, I would play Jarl. I think partly I've been really enjoying it. I still haven't necessarily figured out, can you ever beat Enigma? Probably not. It's probably just a scoop up and go to lunch. That's fine. But I think you're fine into Zen. I think you're very good into Syndra. Arctic Incarceration against Syndra is just a joke. It's just hilarious. Like, you literally just time walk them. It's ridiculous. And I've played a couple of games into New, and I've actually not found the matchup that bad. Because traditionally against Guardian, they steal your blues, but all your blues suck. So you get to just play kind of a value game into them, which is quite nice.
The new matchup is very, very interesting, like into Jarl. Yeah, you can steal like Autumn's Touches and Fruits of the Forest if they're on that. It is a little bit more fatiguey, but if you're not on the CYB, I do wonder how that matchup changes. I've heard it more from the like CYB perspective, where it ends up being a little bit fatiguey. The Jarl plays to blow up the News Mask, and then they can win the fatigue matchup that way. I'm curious about the Zen though, because I feel like what does Jarl do, even this offensive Jarl, if the Zen plays for a Cosmic Awakening endgame?
You have to kill them. You have to kill the Zen. I don't think it's a fatigue game. I think if you get to the end game, for sure they will be. They're probably able to beat you unless you can somehow manage to keep your life high enough to get out of range. But Cosmic's just so much damage. I don't think that's possible. You can potentially find Frostbites in the end game on the right turns to screw their Cosmic turns. But generally, my experience has been that you have to kill them.
Okay. Let's move on to our last Earth hero.
Yeah, tell me about
CC
it.
right now is Verdance. She's been shelved, in my opinion.
Okay.
It's just
not quite as high as I am on Jarl, for instance.
Yeah. We had a glimmer of hope, and then it was crushed a little unceremoniously. So far it's been shelved. I think part of why we had the glimmer of hope was Florian winning, as I think Verdance is quite favored into Florian. Florian can't really put up enough pressure for Verdance to just go ahead and do the whole combo.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe if Sao Paulo happens and Florian turns out to be dunking on Auroras and is going to be super well represented, then you can come back to Verdance and maybe cope yourself into thinking it. But it does feel like her Aurora matchup is it's pretty rough. It's pretty rough.
Yeah, my experience with Verdance is that it's been really cool to play, but I don't think that it's good enough.
The term sitting duck comes to mind. Yeah. I feel like I'm playing Verdance and I'm just like sitting duck / punching bag. I either one of those terms. Like, I'm just sitting here, I'm just getting beat on, and then I die. Yeah. It's kind of what it ends up feeling like. I do want to touch a little bit on Aurora counters. So at the beginning, I did talk about quotation marks Aurora counter in Zen. And I do think Zen is slightly favored into Aurora. But I actually completely forgot to mention this. I think there is a hero that is favored into Aurora, and that's Vincent, actually. And I know you've mentioned before, you are not a fan of these shadow heroes because they're like, I don't know, it's too inconsistent or something. But I do think Vincent into Aurora has quite a bit of game and is something Auroras, I think, might need to think about a little bit. I think there are a number of players looking into Vincent as a potential solution to the meta.
Yeah, I'm not super high on Vincent, but I do agree that I think that matchup is favor for Vincent, and I think that Vincent is better than it's probably shown up to be. I think we saw probably what I would expect Vincent to be doing in this format, probably the last week of Road to Nationals, or last 2 weeks of Road to Nationals, that felt like about where I would expect it to be for, sort of 3 to 5 wins per week. Sort of, it's a player, it's relevant, but to me it's a tier 2 deck because even though I think you are favored to Aurora, I think you're only slightly favored, and honestly, that deck can just fall apart at times. It has some of the similar issues I think Azalea has into Aurora. So, but no, I do think it is. I think it's a reasonable pick, but I don't even know if there's a way to craft that hero to get its percentage ups higher. Like, it feels like it's pretty well explored. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, and it's quite reliant on finding your first Malefic. Now, there are builds that have tried to compensate for that by running, all like 6 Malefics, reds and yellows, and then some copies of Sonata Galaxia as well, to try and get that first one out as soon as possible. But it is it reminds me a little bit of a conversation we had last week about Victor and his clashes and how he needs to win the first clash to get the ball rolling. Yeah. Vincent feels similar. She needs her first Malefic incantation, and then she's rolling. And once she has that, and she's like sort of chaining them and like spacing them out, a few turns, refresh the incantation, play another one. It does feel quite miserable for the opposing aggro deck, because they're just blocking you with a whole bunch of block 4s, and then after banishing 1 card and sending 8 at you off of 1 card. And if you give them space, they still have Creeper's Lines, and they get to go against stuff. So yeah. I think we're both on the same page of Vincent's like favorite into Aurora, but yeah, to your point, she still does have a bit of the inconsistency problems. And sometimes the end games can be tricky too, where if you're out of incantations and the aggro deck starts trying to block you because they're so low, and then if you don't draw the correct cards in correct sequence, you can, to your point, just fall apart. Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we'll visit this meta over the next 2 weeks a bit more as we head to Pro Tour London, but I think it's probably time to get to the water, I would have thought.
Ooh, we should learn some sea shanties or something. The only one I know is like Wellerman. I don't know if you've heard that song.
I have heard that song. Isn't it weird that they did a Flesh and Blood like shanty kind of thing for was it for like Rosetta or something? Was it? No, it was
Heavy Hitters.
Heavy Hitters. Yeah. I feel like they've really wasted that on Heavy Hitters.
Yeah, it was a something drunken wager, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah. I would love another sea shanty for the High Seas trailer. Let's hope we get that.
Yeah, let's get into it. Let's talk High Seas. I think we should start with the heroes we've seen, because they're 3 new heroes, and that's awesome. So I thought maybe we'll let's do them one at a time, and then talk to some of the cards we've seen, and maybe just first thoughts on them.
Yeah, did we want to talk a little bit higher level first? I do want to go over Pirate as a talent.
A class.
Bit. So, Pirate is a talent.
Pirate is a class.
What?
Yes.
But it says
in the
hold on, wait, where
in the High Seas first product article, it refers to 3 new dual class heroes.
I see. Okay, you see, that makes a lot more sense, because when we spoke about Pirate a few weeks ago, we were like, it doesn't quite make sense for it to be a talent, right? When you think about talents as elemental or mystic or draconic, it seems a lot more innate.
Yeah.
Whereas Pirate is kind of like a profession, so it's like, how could that be a talent? So Pirate is a class. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, cool. Then yeah. Did you have thoughts on Pirates being a class rather than a talent?
Yeah, I think it makes sense. I think dual class, we've seen them start to do, who's the royal warrior wizard?
The Emperor.
Emperor. So, we've seen it seeded in Flesh and Blood, and I think, now very cool to... Obviously, with this, you're getting Pirate as a brand new class, right? So it's not like they're pulling from an existing pool of cards, but what is important to think about in the future is that these dual class heroes will obviously, like a talented hero, have access to a wider card pool than a single class hero. And it kind of plays into that pie, right? Like, they're almost building this pie of, okay, you have your talent, you have your class, and then you also have... and with talent as well, you have some of the other pieces to that where, for instance, you have elemental heroes, but then you have the elements they attach to, right? And then now you have dual class, so you can spread across the 2 classes. So I think it's quite an interesting design space that I quite like.
So that technically means we're getting 4 new classes in this set. Sorry, not 4 new classes, 2 new classes in the set, but the set features 4 classes. And that does make me wonder, will we ever get a Pirate hero? Like, just a that's it. That's a
probably
class, just Pirate.
Probably.
Like, it's probably quite a ways down the line, maybe.
Yeah.
Speaking of more higher level stuff, I do want to talk about the tap symbol that we're seeing. Which, when I first saw all the cards, I thought the tap symbol might be Pirate exclusive. but it's not. Because if you look at the Mechanologist cards, there is one Mechanologist card, I forget the name. Let me actually pull it up right now. Sky Skimmer. Mm-hmm. It's not a pirate Mechanologist action. It's just a Mechanologist action that has the tap symbol on it, which means this set is, in a sense, introducing a whole new mechanic for everyone, in a sense. Like, sort of like the Marked or like the Wager or the Clash, where this tap symbol is now a thing in the game.
It's kind of a simplification of something that already exists in the game, though, to an extent, which is the... so Sky Skimmer, for instance, is once per turn instant. I'm just going to say it's tap, because that's what it appears to be. Tap a cog, or activate a cog you control. This gets +1 attack or go again. So rather than having an ability that says once per turn instant, give a cog you control once per turn, or this turn, this can once per turn. Like, rather than giving it all these convoluted ways to do something, that once per turn action, it's now formalizing an activation effect. So you tap it to show that it's used the once per turn instant, right? But it's because these are giving it to another card.
It's slightly different because there are many effects I can give that cog to. It's like sort of a shared once per turn action, right? I think it's probably most clear if you look at Gravy Bones' stuff, where he's got some cards that are like, okay, you tap your ally to get this effect. But it's not just... If that card just said once per turn, you can give an ally this
You could do multiple things.
You could have multiple...
Exactly.
Yeah, you could have multiple of those cards. But this is like saying, no, you can only like make an extra use, in a sense, of your cog or your ally or whatever.
It's limiting.
Once across all your cards of these effects. So
yeah,
it is interesting. Do you have thoughts on the tap? Now, we are sort of assuming it is tap. It does seem like tap. And so far, we haven't seen anything else that untaps, it looks like nothing that says like ready ally or something, which leads me to wonder whether we're going down the line of they're adding an additional like line of text in the rules saying at the start of your turn you also untap all your stuff, which is it does. I feel a little okay. Let's talk about that first before I move on and talk about how I feel about that hypothesis, I suppose.
I have a theory that they're going to try and distance themselves from Magic on this and other games, and they're not going to have a start of turn untap in the rules. I don't think that would fit. So I think we're going to see, honestly, that you just expend it once would be... some of these effects are pretty powerful, right? And I think maybe you just expend it. And some of these are throwaway pieces as well. Like a cog, at some point, you're going to throw to something else. So it's almost like you get an additional effect. An ally is still an ally, so you still get value out of the ally. This is still... Sky Skim is still a 0 for 4 at red attack. It's still a wounding blow at worst. So I actually think there's going to be no form of untapping.
So... for the first part of it, I'm so glad you said that, because I feel very similarly too. Where when I saw this tap stuff and I was like, if they add your stuff untaps at the start of your turn, I was like, that makes it feel like this is very Magic or Lorcana.
Yeah. But Gravy Bones?
To your point, is just... Yeah, I'm just like, it just doesn't feel very flesh and bloody if that is the thing. Which is why I was thinking there might be cards that untap. I'm not so certain about this is like you can't untap it, especially because the hero techs themselves have the tap.
Yeah,
on
Gravy Bones,
and
and Puffin and
all three of them.
Yeah,
all three of them.
They all
have the
three.
tap
I thought it was
on
just
them.
the two.
So
yeah, okay.
Yeah, so I feel like I don't think they design heroes with like once per turn, but these wouldn't be the abilities if it was a once per game ability. I don't think these abilities are strong enough for them to really be once a game. So either maybe there's some equipment, like maybe some pirate equipment maybe that lets you untap or something consistently, or maybe they're just doing start of your turn you untap everything.
I don't think they're doing that. I think I was going to get to the heroes.
I hope not.
I think it's more likely if we're going to see. So I don't think there will be necessarily interaction for cards, but I think there might be interaction for the heroes in terms of like an equipment or an aura or something, which is like start of the turn, ready your hero or something. Or put a counter on this, ready your hero. When this has 3 X counters on it, it blows up, like that sort of thing of an equipment. So you get 3 uses out of the hero in a game or something. So that's my thought on it. I think these, honestly, when I look at these abilities, I think the power level would be sky high if they readied or untapped every turn, honestly. I think that'd be very, very good.
I guess it depends on the goal generation, right? Like for Marlin, actually no, for all three of them have tap, destroy, gold you control. Mm-hmm. So I think the power level will be sky high if we assume gold generation is going to be very, very easy for them, which I'm not entirely sure it is. I'm not entirely, like, we just don't have enough. Like, if the gold generation, like, I guess there's in a sense two balancing knobs here, right? You could untap every turn, but if the gold generation is scarce, it doesn't matter they're untapping every turn. Or you don't untap every turn, you put in something else to untap them, but then you get like enough gold generation kind of thing. So
depends how easy it is to it depends how easy it is to create, because I think, I look at Puff and it's like the second time you crank each turn, draw a card, which tells me you should be able to create a golden cog a reasonable amount of time. Which
Probably.
Then would say that it's probably therefore easy to create gold off your golden cog. I don't know, it's all very interesting to me. I think we have not seen enough cards to say probably what's more likely, but I hope that it's not an untap at the start of a return. I don't know, it feels quite magic-y.
yeah,
but
we are on the same page on that for sure.
We'll see. Should we talk some of these heroes?
Okay, let's talk about the heroes. And I want to start with Gravy Bones. And before even going into his ability and everything, I wanted your thoughts on the name, Hayden. What do you think of the name Gravy Bones?
I don't mind it. I think it's fine.
Okay.
What do you hate it? So I know I've heard some people hate it.
Here's the thing. Okay, I obviously I know LSS love their puns and everything, and I feel like I'm down for like puns and funny card names when it's main deck cards. Yeah, like some of the heavy hitters cards are like just they're like
Smashback.
They clearly had fun with this and stuff. Yeah, and that's like okay, cool. It's like funny. Okay, I played this card. It has its name. All right, cool. When it's on the hero, it does kind of take away something. And some part of me just feels a little bit. Like, the hero should be taken a little bit more seriously. Like, for me, I feel weird if I'm sitting down at a tournament, someone's like, oh, what are you playing? And I have to say Gravy Bones, and then the whole table starts laughing because the name is Gravy Bones. like, the part of the, like, that level of jokeness on, like, the hero name does put me off just very, very slightly.
Yeah.
Especially considering just how the juxtaposition between the art and the name. Like, Gravy Bones sounds like a meme cartoon. Like, I imagine that almost like in SpongeBob, some like meme Davy Jones knockoff or something.
Yeah.
They call him Gravy Bones.
No,
and then this art is like really, really cool and awesome. Yeah, and the art is completely like different from that. It's just hard for me to like take the hero super seriously when the name is Gravy Bones. But it is still a Necromancer, so I'm definitely gonna be like brewing and playing a bunch of it.
I think they should just call it Davy Jones, to be honest.
Yeah, could be.
All right, let's read the cards.
Someone's going to make an altar of that. Yeah.
Gravy Bones, Shipwreck Looter, is a pirate necromancer hero. 4 intellect, 40 health. Says instant, and this is the adult version. Instant. We're just going to call it simple tap. Instant tap. Destroy a gold you control. Draw a card, then discard a card. If a blue card has been put into your graveyard this turn, you may play cards with Watery Grave from your graveyard. And we have seen a card with Watery Grave, so let's talk about Watery Gravers. I'm going to read one of the Watery Grave cards, or I think maybe the only Watery Grave card we've seen so far, which is Chum. Oh, we might have seen more, but I'm going to read this one. Chum, Friendly First Mate. She's a pirate, necromancer, action, ally. It has 4 attack and 6 life. It costs 4 to cast. And it says action, tap, attack. Instant, tap, discard a card with Watery Grave. Until end of turn, opponents must choose this as a target of attacks if able, and this has Watery Grave, which says when this is put into your graveyard from the arena, turn it face down. So going back to Gravy Bones' ability, you need them to be face up. So you need to get it into your graveyard, but not from the arena, so not from having played and it dying or having blocked with it. Effectively.
There are so many things to note about this. Just all day today, ever since I saw the cards, I've just been adding more and more notes. I was like, these questions need to be answered, or how interesting is this? So, first thing, the ally itself has attack on it.
Yes.
Which is different from allies we've seen in the past, where the illusionist weapon had to give it the attack action. Like Droma's Sash of Sendak, I said, your dragons have...
What about Blasphephere
like,
and stuff like that?
Oh, true. Yeah, I guess those.
Without tokens.
The non-illusionist allies had that already.
Yeah.
The other thing I want to note: these allies don't have a block value.
No.
These are action allies, and then there's just a health symbol down there, but there's no block value, which is fascinating because I was trying to do the numbers on Chum specifically, and I was like, it attacks for 4 and has 6 life. So in theory, it's a 4 cost, like 10 value thing, which is obscenely overrate. And then I noticed, I was like, wait, there's no block value on this. And then, of course, there's also the whole
action point.
The summoning the ally doesn't have go again unless you do it from the graveyard, because then the compass gives it go again, which is his offhand, which I guess we haven't read out yet, so I'll just read it out real quick right now. Compass of Sunken Depths is a pirate necromancer equipment offhand, which has instant tap, look at the top card of your deck. That's it, just look at it. And then the first card with Watery Grave you play from your graveyard each turn gets go again. So that's like the way you can bring your ally back and then attack with it the same turn. But other than that, it feels like the numbers on the allies, at least going by Chum, is pretty good, but doesn't have a block value. So it's a very, very interesting sort of cost to like putting allies in your deck.
The more we read these cards, the more I think we are going to have untap at the start of turn. I hadn't read some. I had read them, but I think I hadn't digested like the compass, for instance.
Yeah, and Chum as well. It's just there's too many, I think, like the allies as well. The other important thing to note, face down graveyard. Yeah. Which got me thinking, why isn't it just face down banish? Because we have precedent for face down banish. Right, there's some cards that do that, and it means they're effectively uninteractable once they're face down and banish. So what's the difference between face down in the graveyard and face down and banish? Like, why couldn't these cards just say, this goes... Like, because it feels like you have two uninteractable zones now. You have a face down graveyard and face down banish. And why aren't they shared? Is there something that cares about the raw number of cards in the graveyard or raw number of cards in the banish? It's like that's the other thing that's just bouncing around my head. I'm like, what? Why?
Yeah.
Why couldn't you just put this face down banish?
Maybe there's a way to flip up cards in graveyard, but they don't want that in banish. We know there's ways to flip face down, but there's also maybe potentially unlimited ways to flip face down cards in the graveyard, and it wouldn't make sense to say banish them face down. I think maybe flavor wise. So yeah, I mean it could just be small things like that.
Or it could be some legendary action, some like just once per game action where you flip your graveyard in a sense. Like you flip the face up once face down and a face down once face up.
That'd be cool.
I don't know, it's like maybe Greedy Ones or something like that. Like the singularity equivalent. They just one off in your deck and you play for that or something. I don't know.
Yep. Do we want to talk any other cards? And I mean, I wouldn't mind just looking at some of these attacks. I think they're quite interesting. Like all these cards have the tap symbol on them. So we've got cards like Paddle Faster, which is a pirate necromancer action attack at rare. This is the red one. Presumably there's a cycle. It's 0 cost, 4 attack, 3 defense. Says when this attacks, you may tap an ally you control. If you do, this gets go again. Very cool. I like that. That's quite a cool sort of effect. Yeah, I don't know. These cards are pretty sweet, honestly. And like the art on Paddle Faster is so cool.
I like the flavor of that, where you have these allies, and then you are the necromancer on the ship, and then you are sort of delegating them to do different tasks, and that's how you exhaust them and you can't attack with them because they're there paddling faster or something, or they're there helping you block, or they're helping you do something else, so they're like occupied, and then they can't attack for you because you already send them to do something else. And like it's got a bit of the necromancer sending his minions on like to do his bidding sort of vibe. We did get another ally spoiler. This was it's a promo card. I don't really know exactly where it came from. But
yes. Yep.
Rigor Mortis. Yeah, Rigor Mortis is the name. It's a yellow pirate necromancer action ally. Costs 1 and no block value because that's the way these allies are. It's yellow. It has 6 attack value and 1 health. And it has action. You have to pay 1 for this and tap it. Action attack. And it has Watery Grave as well, which is different from Chum. Chum doesn't have a resource cost to attack with it, but Rigor Mortis does. And 1 health, which, I think we saw hints of that with Anaphylactic Shock in the Hunted. Just a trap that deals 1 damage or anything that's dealt damage to you. So you can just clear out a Rigor Mortis, I suppose. But 1 health ally does make me a little bit nervous, Hayden, just because, still have PTSD from Rake the Embers. Although it does seem like we don't know yet whether these allies will get like easy go again, because I think that was the most obnoxious part of Rake the Embers. So if it doesn't, then maybe something like this is totally fine.
Yeah, another weapon from Gravy Bones that says allies you control go again, for instance, would be... Maybe not what I want to see.
Oh, but also Rigor Mortis does have a resource cost as well, which is also another balancing knob, right? Which is like the Rake the Embers thing was also just 0 cost attack with everything.
Yeah, and also to play it from your hand, it still costs you an action, and unlike
true,
for instance, the dragons that had go again on them, this does not when you play it. So yeah, I think this looks like they've found a way to make allies potentially looks pretty balanced. We'll see. I mean, the set looks really cool. I think one thing I want to talk about was just some of the themes of Pirate Necromancer and Gravy Bones, which is it's in kind of some of the text. If a blue card has been put into your graveyard this turn, you may play cards with watery gray from your graveyard. So there's a bit of a blue kind of meta thing with Gravy Bones, but there's also a bit of a yellow piece that we will also get into from like the Ranger side. So it looks like there's a bit of like color flexing going on.
There's also yellow piece from the Necromancer side, actually. There's Chart the High Seas, which is zero cost Pirate Necromancer action, which blocks for 3. It's blue, and it says, look at the top 2 cards of your deck. You may pitch a blue card from among them. Put the rest into your graveyard. Create a gold token for each yellow card put into your graveyard. This way, go again. Yeah. So it seems like Gravy Bones is gonna have like a heavy blue and yellow matters themes. Like the allies that we have seen so far, Chum and Rigor Mortis are both yellow, and his hero text plus Chart the High Seas care about blues. So that's pretty interesting to see, I think.
Yeah. It looks like maybe there's a yellow theme through the set, and then Gravy Bones also adds on a blue theme potentially. Yeah, to that point, which is quite interesting. Should we talk about one of the other heroes?
Yes, I think I want to talk about Marlin next, which on the surface, so far, my immediate thought when I looked at her hero ability, is she the least fatigable ranger? Because each gold token is effectively an extra weapon.
Do you want to read Marlin?
Right, you just... Oh, right, yes. Oh my god, yeah, I should have done that. Thank you for pointing that out. Marlin, Treasure Hunter, 40 health, 4 intellect, Pirate Ranger hero, has action, tap, destroy a gold you control, create a Goldfin Harpoon in your hand, go again, and whenever you draw a card during your action phase, you may put an arrow from your hand face up into your arsenal. And I will also just read Goldfin Harpoon real quick. Goldfin Harpoon is a yellow, 0-cost Pirate Ranger action arrow attack, which attacks for 2, blocks for 0. And it says, this card is yellow, but cannot be pitched. And if this would be put into a graveyard, instead remove it from the game. Oh my god, same thing here. There's just so many things to note and so many things to talk about. So, okay, I'm going to start with the Golden Harpoon first.
Yeah.
It doesn't have the ephemeral keyword on it.
No, it doesn't. But it's similar to...
The part that's different is that the ephemeral keyword says you can't start with it in your deck.
Mm-hmm.
So Golden Harpoon missing the ephemeral keyword means that you can start with it in your deck, which is just very like question mark, like why would you do that? Is there some sort of like Phoenix Flame kind of thing going on here, where there's certain builds where you might want Phoenix Flames in your deck, like to begin with, right? We're playing like Flame Call Awakening or something. At the same time, she also is able to create them, so that's like super interesting. But you can't pitch these yellows. These Golden Harpoons.
And it has no defensive value either. So it is, I mean, it's very similar to a Crush Tiger, except for the no ephemeral, to your point. Like it's, so it'd be interesting to see if we do see a reason to play these in your deck at all. Maybe searching or for having this specific name convention. If you've played a Goldfin Harpoon this turn, have X happen to you. Mullen's very interesting. I think the cards we've also seen so far, I mean, the flavor in the set is fantastic. We've got cards like King Shark Harpoon, which is a Pirate Ranger action, arrow attack at Majestic, attacks for 6, defense for 3, cost 2 at red, and says Go Fish, which is a new keyword we've got there in the form of Go Fish. When this hits a hero, they choose and reveal a card from their hand. If it's an attack action card, they discard it and you create a gold token. If you've activated a cannon this turn, instead look at their hand and you choose the card. What the hell's a cannon? That's what my question is right now, because we have not seen a cannon so far.
I like how they just dropped that on us as like a hint saying, by the way, cannons are coming, as if that isn't like a super, super cool thing. And then that's it. That's all we have. This is like leaving us with a little teaser. Like, yep, cannons are coming. Bet you're hype about that. Yeah, we are hype about that. What is a cannon? We're going to have to wait and see.
No clue.
I did want to just go back to Marlin's hero ability real quick. Coming back to my point about the least fatigable ranger, because you can convert every gold into a Goldfin Harpoon, I wonder if she's going to dodge what so far has been a bit of a Achilles heel for rangers, where they don't have a weapon and you can just literally run them out of arrows. Depending on the gold generation, it could be not super possible to do that with Marlin.
Yeah,
and I think that's a very interesting take on the ranger class.
My head's been spinning all day, like reading these cards. I mean, first of all, just getting excited about the flavor, the art. I mean, look at Big Game Trophy Shot. Like, what a friggin' piece of art. Like, another Pirate Ranger action. This one's yellow, non-attack action, defense 3, cost 2 at Majestic. Says your next arrow attack this turn gets +4 attack. If it has Harpoon in the name, it gets when this hits a hero, create a gold token. And it also says draw a card, then discard a card, go again. Like, what? Like, that's already targeting, triggering Marlin's ability. Whenever you draw a card during your action phase, you may put an arrow from your hand face up to your arsenal. So you're finding your ways to get your arrows in there without having without using your weapon, for instance. I mean, Marlin could wield Death Dealer. You could trigger off Death Dealer and you get 2 arrows in if you have New Horizon, for instance. Like, Marlin seems like a perfect candidate for running New Horizon, for example. So yeah, there's so many cool interactions that we're going to uncover as more of these cards come out. Also, the friggin' borders on these heroes is so awesome. Like the pirate border that they have, so cool.
Or her two-handed weapon is actually just a cannon, and you're only supposed to load your arrows in via her hero ability.
Maybe.
Because I did want to point out, every gold token is basically Death Dealer. Just a gold token by itself is a 2-cost Death Dealer. You pitch to it, draw a card, now you get to load an arrow. Mm-hmm. So it's like one extra resource cost Death Dealer, and then you can have your cannon as your weapon, which is, I think, potentially maybe the way they're going with this hero. And also on the cost structure of a lot of these cards, I think straight up we're seeing that this seems to be like MST-esque in that I think these heroes are all going to want a fair number of blues.
Yeah.
Given that they're all around creating gold tokens and probably wanting to cash in the gold tokens for the gold tokens effect as well. I mean, just look at the resource cost on Chum, right? 4 cost. That tells me the intended play pattern is you pitch a blue to your gold, you have 1 floating, you pitch another blue for your 4 cost. And a lot of Marlin stuff being 2 cost, it's like, you can pitch a gold and you pay 2 for Big Game Trophy Shot and pay 2 for your King Shark Harpoon, right? So it's like, totally, it's like built around almost like a 6, like you want to hit the 6 resource cost, and with by summing up a whole bunch of like 2-cost actions or 2 and 4-cost actions.
Yeah, you're basically turning your gold token into a resource, effectively, right? Like, you're kind of depends what you draw, obviously, but if you have enough blues, you're effectively saying, okay, here's my 2-card 4-cost, or my 3-card worth 4. It's really interesting. I love that interaction, and forcing people to have to respect that interaction is going to be really interesting as well. So should we, I guess, anything more to say about Marlin, or should we move on to Puffin?
Let's move on to your favorite class in the game, Hayden. Tell us about Puffin.
I mean, I do really like Mechanologist. I don't know if it's my favorite class in the game, but that might have been Bright Lights really getting involved in that one. Puffin Hightail is a pirate Mechanologist hero, 40 health, 4 intellect. Action: tap, destroy gold you control, create a golden cog token. The second time you crank each turn, draw a card, and we'll read the golden cog. Golden cog is a Mechanologist token cog item. It has crank. So reminder of crank is, as this enters the arena, you may remove a steam counter from it if you do gain an action point. This enters the arena with a steam counter. At the start of your turn, destroy this unless you remove a steam counter from it. So I think what I note with Puffin straight away is obviously that you can tap, destroy a gold you control, create a golden cog, effectively gaining an action point if you want to with crank, or you can sit around to potentially use it for something else on a following turn. And of course, when you crank, if you crank a golden cog plus something else in that turn, the second time you crank each turn, you draw a card. So Puffin has like this engine built into it, right, of action points or card draw, and that is really cool. Like, Puffin seems like it could be very powerful, honestly.
Her ability, you're halfway through the required cost of cranking twice to already draw a card if you have gold lying around, which, I agree with you. I think could be very, very strong. And to your point about the engine, I think that's just kind of just yet another, like we've spoken about this a lot, where they kind of nail the flavor of these classes and these heroes. And you talk about like Mechanologist and her already like having this sort of engine that she's building towards. It's just very, very mech flavored, right? Do you want to go into some of the main deck cards that we've seen?
Yeah, I thought we'd talk Galvanized returning. We've seen Golden Sky Warden, which is a pirate Mechanologist action attack at Majestic. Attacks for 7, defends for 2, costs 4 at yellow, and has Galvanized. So when this defends, you may destroy an item you control. If you do, this gets +1 defense. However, this also says if a golden cog is destroyed this way, create a gold token and repeat this process. So Puffin could, in theory, stack a couple of cogs. One with a steam counter, one without, for instance, or maybe even different ways, and then you could be destroying them to block with additional value on something like your Golden Sky Warden. What I'm curious about is, does Galvanize, like this looks like all one text of Galvanize, like in terms of the Golden Cog, you can destroy and repeat it. So all the cards of Galvanize in this set going to have this Golden Cog clause added to it effectively, is what I want to know. So yeah, interesting.
Mm-hmm. I mean, not even multiple golden cogs. I think even if you just destroy one golden cog that doesn't have a steam counter on it with this, like with the galvanize, I think you're already really happy because you got the payoff from the cog. Like maybe it was one of your 2 cranks, or you even tapped it for something else, and then you turned it right back into a gold, which means next time you can just activate Puffin again without needing to go through whatever hoops you have to go through to create gold again. Because that is still a very important piece that we are missing. How are these heroes creating their gold? Right?
Yeah,
and like these engines and everything look super exciting. We're like, oh, maybe Marlin loads arrows, like it's like Death Dealer and everything, but we do need to see how these heroes create the gold. And I think seeing an ability that lets you sort of recycle your payoff back into the resource, which is the gold, I think is just like I'm looking at this card saying I think this is gonna have a place. And also the galvanizing golden cogs, there are other cards that galvanize for pretty good rate, right? Like adaptive plating is one that immediately comes to mind. Use adaptive plating away one of your like effectively spent golden cogs, and get like +2 defense on that. Already just seems like really, really strong.
Yeah, what's interesting is that we time and time again see this when sets come out. You go, wow, these cards look really powerful. Oh, how will they generate this one resource they need to make it powerful? It's like when Transcend, you're like, wow, this is really powerful. And then like, how many chi will there be? Oh, there's not that many Transcend cards, right? Like it's always like kind of the piece is like one of the controlling factors of some of these power levels. Like it's like their little dimmer switch they have on the power level, right? They're like, look at this really cool thing. You're like, wow, that's really bright. And they're like, yeah, but look at this dimmer switch. It only goes up halfway. And you're like, oh, okay. It's kind of like that a little bit. So it is going to be really interesting to see how they create gold. It's obviously the piece that's going to be the limiter to these heroes. They all share the fact that they need to have gold to enact their kind of loops or their effects or to leverage their power level of these heroes. Because just at face value, these heroes are all really powerful, but they're all really reliant on having access to that resource in the form of gold. So, which makes sense, right? They're pirates. You need to feed them with gold. So, you've got to pay them gold. How will you get your gold? That's what we'll find out with this set.
They have to go plunder that treasure or whatever if they can do the thing. I did
Plunder Run Reprint?
Point out Sky. Sorry?
Plunder Run Reprint.
Oh, Plunder Run.
Unban.
That would be very thematic for sure. I do want to point out Sky Skimmer real quick.
Yeah.
Mechanologist action attack, 0 cost. It comes in 3. It comes in. It's a cycle. It comes in red, yellow, and blue. The red one attacks for 4, blocks for 3, cost 0. Has once per turn instant. Tap a cog you control. This gets +1 attack or go again. When I saw this card, I was like, is this the new 0 to 60? Or is this Puffin's 0 to 60? This card looks quite incredible to me, Hayden. And it also is the big hint that this whole tapping mechanic thing is coming to the rest of Flesh and Blood and is not limited to just these heroes, because this is not a pirate mechanologist action.
Yeah. It's super interesting. It tells me like that we're going to potentially get cog makers that are also not pirate, right? Like, because Golden Sky Warden is a pirate mechanologist action, but I think that's more related to its galvanize ability as opposed to its cog ability. So I'm interested to see. They've given us some great hints. Like, I think this is the conversation, right? This is why they do this. You're going to be sat here having these conversations the next few weeks until maybe we see some more information at Pro Tour London, or I mean, we're not that far away we're 2 months away from world premiere. Like, we're not actually that far away.
Maybe they'll show us weapons. Maybe the trailer will be they're all fighting, and then like Marlin fires a cannon, and then after that it like does the frame into showing us like her cannon and what that is, kind of thing.
Can't
and
have
like
a
the
cannon
same for the
though.
other heroes.
She's quite clearly got a harpoon in her hand, and all of her things reference harpoons. So like I'm like, how, like, it would make no sense thematically for her to have a cannon as a weapon. Like, unless you got
that's
I don't know.
yeah.
We'll see.
That's a fair point.
There's some cool cards, man. Hoist them up. Pirate Necromancer block. Blocks of 4. Continues that flavor that you spoke about. When this defends, you may tap an ally you control. If you do this, gets +1. Like, just, the minions helping out. It is really cool. So yeah, I'm very, very pumped. Any other kind of thoughts or anything when it comes to pirates and high seas?
I was at first wondering where the pirate part of it starts and where the pirate part of it ends.
Yeah.
Which was, so it seems like the gold part and the, in a sense, draw discard part
Pirates.
is where the pirate stuff.
Yeah, the loot.
That's a part that's limited.
The loot.
The pirates, yeah, the looting, right? Which was interesting because looting is not a keyword we've ever actually seen in Flesh and Blood. It's very much magic uses looting, and then I guess this kind of following that, being like, okay, looting is the pirate thing here as well. And it's the same thing like draw and discard.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was something that was coming to my mind because we sort of saw a whole bunch of pirate and class stuff, and I was like, the whole tap thing, for example, I was like, wait, is this limited to pirates or not? Turns out it's not, but it'll be interesting to see, like, sort of, especially given that pirate is a class, what exactly does it entail to be a pirate? Like, what do the sort of pirate-only cards look like? Because I do imagine there's going to be some pirate actions, hopefully,
so,
maybe.
yeah.
I don't know. We thought there'd be more chaos actions, but it was only spell locked. But you imagine there'll be more like pirate stuff, given that they said it's a class. So I'm curious to see that being fleshed out a little bit more and like where that ends up.
Yeah, me too. I think you nailed it though in terms of where the pirate side of it starts and ends. Like, what is the mechanics of a pirate? Effectively, with our first time seeing this class, it seems like the mechanics of a pirate is it is plundering and
Gold.
Yeah, looting, quote unquote, which is draw and discard a card. And in terms of, like, even if you look at, so we'll take the Mechanologist, right, for instance, like this one has Crank. Like Puffin cares about Crank, for instance, right? That's obviously a very heavily tied to being a Mechanologist. And then the crossover piece is Golden Cog. Like that's the crossover piece of a pirate Mechanologist, for instance. And if we go to Gravy Bones, it's a little bit tougher because we haven't seen Necromancer before in terms of what that is. But obviously we see gold and draw and discard in his first ability. And if a blue card has been put into your graveyard this turn, you may play cards with Watery Grave. Now, Watery Grave is interesting to me because it indicates pirate, right, in terms of water, but then also Necromancer because of the effect.
Grave.
So how does that one play out in the future is the question I have, because this all seems like very much pirate-based, but maybe Watery Grave is just, maybe it's X-Grave. It's Watery Grave, it's, I don't know, Earth Grave, whatever. It's
Shadowy Grave.
Yeah. And then when you look at Marlin, obviously you got the gold there, but then you've got credit a harpoon. So creating arrows is very much the ranger side of things, and putting stuff face up into your arsenal. So which we've seen before. So yeah,
the flavor already looks very, very cool and incredible.
Very well done.
As someone who wasn't too interested in pirates in general, it's crazy how interested I am in all these heroes suddenly.
I feel like I'm super biased because one of my least favorite Magic sets of all time when I played Magic was a pirate set. It was like a set that had pirates in it. Ixalan, for those that maybe played Magic, one of my least favorite. It had dinosaurs and pirates, and the gameplay was kind of bad, and the mechanics were kind of whatever, and the set was kind of, honestly, in totality, whatever. And I feel like, honestly, LSF have put a lot of effort into this to be like, hey, you remember when Magic made that pirate set? Well, we did this way better. Honestly.
I'd say my closest interaction with pirate themed things was probably Assassin's Creed Black Flag, which I had a bit of an opposite reaction to. When I was going into it, I was like, wait, why are they putting pirates in my assassin game? I want to be going around stealthily and assassinating people in castles or whatever, not on this ship being engaged in open sea warfare. But I really enjoyed that game in the end. When I started playing it, I was like, wait, this game actually slaps. So I think when we spoke about High Seas predictions, I think talk about potentially Pirate Assassin.
Yeah.
Just because of Assassin's Creed. But, I think we already have 5 assassins in the game, so probably good we didn't get another one.
We did a pretty good job, though. We said no brute, no way, no brute, no pirate brutes coming out here. We're not going to have brutes on the high seas. We did have a bit of a conversation about Mechanologist, right, and what that could briefly look like. I don't know if we did touch on Necromancer, actually. I don't know if we touched on new... Oh, we did a little bit touch on new classes, actually. So, yeah, we did a pretty good job in our predictions, actually, I will say. We nailed Ranger.
And Ranger was obvious.
That was an easy one. That was a gimme. That was a freebie.
Yeah, that was... Yeah.
Well, I am honestly very keen. I'm now going to put High Seas to the side and focus solely on this Pro Tour and what we've currently got set in front of us. But I just have such high faith that this... Get it? High faith? That this next set is going to see us on our way. Anyway, I'm really excited. It makes me want to get to Taipei for the world premiere as well, because I think the mechanics being so in depth has a lot of intrigue to me when it comes to limited as well. I think about some of my maybe favorite limited sets. I would say the Uprising, because of the mechanics that we saw with Wizards in particular. I don't think, and Dromai, I don't think it necessarily extended to Fire, which I thought made that format a little bit less enjoyable, honestly. But if they had maybe made Fire a little bit different, that set could have been the all-time limited set, honestly. And even like Heavy Hitters to a degree, which has some of that flavor piece and some of those really interesting mechanics to it with gold and with the tokens and things like that. And I think that's quite interesting. So, yeah.
I'm glad you brought up Limited, because I did think about that when I was looking at these sets. I think one thing that jumped out to me was all these heroes look quite complex. Mm-hmm. Like, we need more information about the tap mechanic, but because it is a sort of resource that you share across your different cards, like, you know, your cards that want you to tap your golden cog, you sort of need to decide which one of those you're going to use, like which payoff you're going to actually go for. And if there's things that tap your heroes too, you might need to be deciding, okay, are you tapping your hero for this, or are you going to use a hero ability which involves tapping? I think there seems to be a fair amount of complexity, not to mention the macro as well that was also spoiled. Treasure Island, which is a high seas macro landmark. The first time a hero is attacked, each turn put a gold counter on this. Whenever you or an ally you control deals damage to an opposing hero, you remove that many gold counters from this, then create gold tokens equal to the number of counters removed this way. So that's a very easy gold generation mechanic in Limited. And to suddenly manage this extra resource on top of all the complexity that's going on in the heroes, it did make me wonder, I mean, for US Nats at least, the weekend the set release, like US Nats is the weekend the set releases.
Yeah.
Which is, everyone's playing this in Limited for US Nats, and I was like, ooh, that's a complicated set to have to try and figure out in a very short time.
What I have a question about, though, is when we saw the first macro in Sanctuary of Aria come in Rosetta, it had the text, you start the game with this in the arena when playing the limited format, Rosetta limited format. This does not say that on Treasure Island. So do we know that this is going to start in play? Is that now just that's what macros do? Or is there going to be, there's a way to actually create this? Because this is quite strong. So, yeah, don't know.
So the Rosetta macro, it was in reminder text.
It was, yeah.
You know, so I do wonder whether maybe that's like part of it. Like maybe the macro thing just means that now. But yeah, or to your point, maybe you have to create it somehow, which would be super interesting.
Why is this a landmark?
But it does somewhat.
Why, like the Rosetta macro wasn't a landmark, and this one is. So it's
true.
There's just some differences in the formatting of the card.
Yeah, that's a very fair point. But I think it does somewhat imply that in CC these heroes will have a fair bit of gold generation in a sense. Like if you look at the Rosetta macro as like the baseline, like the Rosetta macro is very much, hey, like this kind of like fixes these heroes because they deal arcane. Like it just fixes the Limited, and you don't need to like draft your AB or whatever like you had to do in the past.
Yeah.
And if you're following that sort of vibe, if this macro is saying, hey, in Limited you don't have as much gold generation as we want you to have for the designs of these heroes, that's why we're giving you this macro. It does sort of imply that, yeah. In CC, we're going to see some fair, consistent generation. My money's on an equipment, like some legendary pirate equipment that helps with gold generation.
The last thing I have is that we've got all these tokens have the B symbol on them instead of T. So are they changing the rarity symbol for tokens to B, whatever that means? I'm not sure if maybe we've already seen that be a thing. Like in terms of there was an announcement about that in the article. I did read through, but I might have missed that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And before we end, I did want to just shout out the old heroes that cared about gold, which is like Kasai and Betsy and Olympia. They're probably just looking at this, being like, "What the heck? Why are these people pirates and they care about gold, and we have gold on a bunch of our cards and mechanics too, but we're not pirates." And it's a bit of a rough time for some of those heavy hitters heroes, I think.
Poor heavy hitters heroes. I just found the answer to my question, by the way. I looked at the product configuration, and it says that the High Seas expansion slot features 14 powerful cards covering a range of heroes and classic outside of those featured in High Seas. And then to do this, remove the last 2 cards from the booster pack before adding the rest to your card pool. These 2 cards will be one of the following combinations: 2 basic cards, so they're renaming tokens to be basic cards, 1 basic card plus 1 expansion slot, etc., etc. So yes, they're changing the symbol of things that would have been tokens or token adjacent to be basic cards that remove when you do your they sit in the expansion slot effectively in your draft packs.
I think that could clear up a lot of confusion, I think, because of the overloading of the term token, right?
Yes.
There's token rarity and token type. So Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense.
I agree. I think it's probably for the best they've done that. Cool. Awesome. Last thing I want to say is, honestly, if you look at the product page for the set, the friggin' set looks awesome. Like, the packaging looks awesome. The box looks awesome. We are getting a Gravy Bones Armory deck, by the way, releasing on May 30th. So actually releases before the set releases. You get access to the Gravy Bones deck, which is pretty cool. I think it's the weekend of pre-release, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, because the release is the first week of June.
Sounds about right. Yeah.
Yeah. So very cool.
That's really cool, by the way. I think people were wondering, sort of like, are we going to go through Assassin thing again, where Assassin came out in Dynasty but wasn't playable until like more than a year later because they just needed sets of support. And I think this Armory deck thing is a really, really cool way to sort of jumpstart the new class.
Agree, because you don't have enough cards in theory, right, relative to other things. So yeah, I have a feeling that Necromancer is not necessarily going to be. I think it'll be solid, but I think it's likely to be the worst of the three heroes out the gate, just given that the other three obviously have the card pool to support it. If I had to put my money on which one I think is going to be the most powerful right now, I have this feeling that it's going to be Marlin. Like, I think Puffin, it looks really powerful on paper, but I think there's going to be some restrictions that limit it. And then once you limit that ability, I think it's a lot worse. Whereas if you limit Marlin's ability, it's still really good, especially when you draw a card during your action phase, put an arrow from your hand face up into your arsenal. So, yeah, I think Marlin has the potential to be the best of the three out the gate, but we'll see.
I'm in a similar boat. If you ask me right now which one I expect to be the strongest, my money's on Marlin as well.
Cool. All right, well, that has been episode 205 of Arsenal Pass. The Pirates are here. We're all aboard the Arsenal Pass pirate ship. We're waving our skull bones flag. We're ready to go. We spoke a little bit about Earth Heroes. Next few weeks is going to be the lead up to Pro Tour London. We're super excited to be there. We'll be in the booth, bringing you all the coverage. But until the next episode, we'll see you later.